Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show, ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.
King Richard, new movie out now on HBO Max and in movie theaters, starring Will Smith, about the father of Venus and Serena Williams as they were children growing up, being coached by their dad. Biopic. Written by Zach Baylin, which is first for him. This is the first movie that he wrote. Directed by Reinaldo Marcus Green, who's directed some other things that are pretty good. But this is a movie that I liked this movie. I didn't love the movie. It was okay. I think the worst part about this film is Will Smith. I would have loved, my dream to, if I could go back in time and somehow change what this story was going to be, I would have much rather seen this movie in a limited series, right? Maybe like 3 separate stories, 3 separate chunks, or more. I don't know how big of a story this would have been normally, but felt like, I mean, it suffers from the thing that a lot of biopics suffer from, where it's like they're cramming in a bunch of information, and it's done in a way where it feels like there's stuff cut out. And everything's kind of almost effortless. There's not a lot of obstacles to overcome in this movie necessarily. But the worst part, so my dream would be for this to be a limited series, right, in 3 parts or more, whatever, 5, 10, I don't care, because I think the story is interesting. Limited series and starring Delroy Lindo instead of Will Smith. Like, Will Smith is doing some kind of impersonation, I assume, of King Richard or Richard Williams, and he goes in and out of this impression that he's doing, where sometimes it's like, okay, he's clearly like he's got an accent, he's got an edge to him. He's also throws out these, fun, like Ted Lasso-esque motivational one-liners, which are great, or just one-liners in general. I enjoy that. I think it's a well-written character. But Will Smith peeks through at moments and takes me out of that character, which is the focus of this film. I'm not necessarily the biggest Will Smith fan. I think he is one of the most overrated actors. He's maybe done a few movies that are good, but a lot of them are just not. I just don't think he's a great actor. I think he has a lane of film that he can pull off. And this, I don't know. I just think it was bad casting. Like, Delroy Lindo in this would be perfect. Like, he has like an edge to him. He's a great actor. One of the best performances last year from Da 5 Bloods, the Spike Lee joint. Great performance from him there. I think that type of performance would have done this movie a lot better, even if it weren't in my magical dream world, a series. But yeah, Will Smith is the worst part of this movie. Aside from it having the problems of just like a biopic, I think Will Smith, and it's not like it's a horrible performance, it's just like mediocre. There's parts, he's like also playing a guy who's like older and kind of beat up. He's worked to the bone, trying to, train, his girls. He has 5 daughters, 2 of which, Serena and Venus, in tennis. His wife, great. I think all the actors in this movie are great. Like, every single one of them, even the kids, great actors, top to bottom, great acting, great casting all around, which makes Will Smith stand out like a sore thumb. Like, at no point was I in his performance. At no point did I believe his performance. It was kind of sad. It even had like a physical aspect to it not fitting, where it's similar to The Irishman, where you have Robert De Niro trying to play a young person but his body is clearly moving in an old person way. Doesn't work at all. I don't care how much CG you put on his face. He's moving like an old man. There's points in this reversed where it's like Will Smith, he's moving like a vibrant, healthy, younger type of a man. Whereas in the end of the movie, they show clips from Richard Williams' actual interviews where he seems like he's got an edge to him. He's got he's got some really smart remarks, calling, people racist, which, this movie touches on a lot of different issues, but I just think there's just no edge to Will Smith. Will Smith has never been like an actor to ever show any kind of like edge to him, like Denzel Washington, in Man on Fire, or Delroy Lindo in The Five Bloods, or just there's just like, it's like there's nothing. It's just he's just like generic. It's sad. I appreciate Will Smith. I think, great musician. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was amazing. He's been in a few good movies. I think his lane is more like rom-com. He's got like a great personality. He's very charming and charismatic. But in this role, I think he's clearly cast because of his name. Maybe he even helped produce it. I wouldn't be surprised. But like the worst part of the movie. Aside from that, I thought it was an okay movie. I thought it was an interesting story. I thought the type of person he was, super inspiring. He's this dad. First off, great family. Both the dad and the mom. Raising 5 girls in Compton. Super positive. Always like and positive and tough. Tough in a way where they have high standards for their daughters and push them to be successful, but like not in an abusive way. Because one of the big themes of this was Richard Williams not wanting his daughters to burn out in the junior circuit, because he was seeing all these girls just burning out because their parents are pushing them way too hard, way too fast. And Richard, he had a plan to get them to the pinnacle of their sport. And he was successful in it. Spoilers for those that don't know the careers of Serena and Venus Williams. But he was successful. And it was interesting seeing that. It's interesting seeing that. The downside, because they're such a happy family, like positive, great stuff. The only real kind of like negativity or like obstacles they had to deal with were like, okay, they have local gangs that try and start shit, right? But even that like ends up working itself out, and they end up being supportive of what Richard is doing. Then there's like the obvious racism that they would run into being in country clubs. I mean, tennis and golf are very similar in that they're very much like country club type sports, which for a long time was country clubs were very like white supremacist, whites only, men only types of clubs. So of course you see some people with excess melanin in their skin, there's going to be racism. But this movie only like touches on it. A little over 4 years ago, I started The Many Faces. It's an ongoing series of abstract ink portraits. Each piece is improvised. Each piece is released daily. Start collecting now. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com/TMF. That stands for The Many Faces. And save yourself 25% when you use coupon code RTS. That stands for The Ray Taylor Show, because that's what you're listening to, and I love you. So I want you to save 25% when you use that coupon code. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com/TMF and use coupon code RTS to save 25% when you start collecting one of over 1,600 original ink paintings by myself. I made them. Support me. I love you. Back to the show. Like, there's a couple conversations, negotiations, or reporters where Richards, throws out is like, oh, it's nice that everybody took off their white hoods before they came into the country club today. Like, there's like lines like that coming from Will Smith don't cut the way they would coming from an actor who has an edge to him, has an ability to have like, it's like having this like dark, scary part within you that's like, like serious. None of Will Smith is like scary or serious or like he's just too happy. So him playing this kind of character where he's like, I don't know, it just didn't fit. But racism is part of the difficulty of this movie. Also, there's a neighbor that was like a Karen type of a neighbor across the street who calls like child protective services on the family because she thinks they're pushing him too hard. But even that gets resolved. The police show up and they're like, Will Smith has this whole thing where he's like, which is probably his best performance in this movie, where he's going off on the cops. That was okay. Where he's like, listen, I'm training like doctors. I'm training like, these girls are going to be important people in the future. And that's why I'm pushing them so hard, because I don't want them in the streets being criminals, getting into gangs, getting into like all of the things that happen when you are systematically forced to live in poverty. That was a good scene. I mean, like, there's aspects of this movie I enjoy, and it was a fun ride to see how they all got started. You seeing these clips of him training them. He's trying to get coaches for them to learn from like the best coaches, and which I didn't know that similarly to like MMA, I guess, where there's a thing where the coaches paid to have the family, like they pay for everything, these coaches in like these giant facilities where they have like 30 courts and all. It's like a big business of like training tennis stars, which I wasn't aware of. I wasn't aware of like the level of like infrastructure that's behind tennis, in that they can afford to like buy housing, food, everything was taken care of by this coach, which was interesting. And it was like he was doing it just as Richard pulled his daughters out of playing in juniors, which they were dominating, but he didn't want them to burn out. He just wanted them to train, which there's a lot. That's what I love about this movie. The work ethic and the idea of practice makes better. And you don't get better by playing games, by competing as much as you do from training and having fun. Like a big part of his thing, because he didn't want them to burn out, is that he wanted them to grow up as kids, do kid things, not be bogged down by tennis and training and competing. He was like on top of making sure, preventing any of those things from being a downfall later on. So I that aspect of it I really enjoyed. How he trained them, I like all of that stuff. Loved it. When he's training, when like one of the coaches early on, he goes and crashes a training session with I forget. It was two like big tennis players back, and I love tennis. I used to play tennis when I was a kid. But now what was that coach's name? Pete Sampras. Pete Sampras' coach. Like he was training with somebody else, and like they were taking a break, and Richard comes in with his daughters. He's like, let me just hit a few balls with them. Let them show you what they can do. And there's the scene where the coach is hitting the balls back and forth, going through some drills with the girls, and then, ask them what they want to do. and Venus, who's kind of the main character, like secondary, I guess, behind Richard, and then Serena is just behind her. She's like, I want to win Wimbledon as many times as I can. And then Serena's like, I just want to play like me. I don't want to be some other tennis player. I want to be my own player. I want to play like me when I grow up. And the coach chooses Venus. But when he's doing these training things, because he only took one of the daughters, Richard sets up a VHS recorder, a camcorder, to record the training. So it's like he was doing everything to make sure that his daughters, that way he could take the tape back, obviously rewatch it for himself, but also to use that as a way to train Serena since she's not getting the one-on-one stuff. So he was like always ahead of the game as far as what to do to maximize his potential, taking advantage of opportunities. Like, there's so much of this movie that I really did enjoy on a lot of different aspects. But the performance of Will Smith was a bummer. It was a bummer. Like, I would have almost loved this movie to be like about Serena, right? The one there's this great scene where Venus is in playing juniors and she's just destroying everybody, right? And Serena, who's been like, they've been training together for their whole life, is kind of been pushed to the sidelines, and she like sneaks, like covert, under the radar, signs up for a tournament and is playing in a tournament, and her parents don't even know. Super, like, way more interesting. I mean, not that Richard wasn't interesting, very interesting as well, but I think if it was a movie that followed Serena, it could still touch on all of those things, but give you a perspective of somebody that I don't know. I just think this movie could have been manipulated in a few ways to make it better. One, dude, if Delroy Lindo and I don't know, maybe he's too old. Maybe he was offered it and didn't get it. I just think they wanted a name. Will Smith is a name, not the greatest actor in my opinion. But yeah, it's it's great on a lot of levels. All of the hurdles that are set in place are like easily overcome. There's like really no stakes. Like, at no point did I feel like, I mean, obviously we know what happened in reality, but there was no point in this movie where I was like worried about, like, even there points where Richard is fighting with the gangs, right? Richard, depressed. It seems like it's a scene where he's giving up and he's just hitting. He goes to the tennis court at the park late at night and he's just hitting balls. I think Venus had lost. I think she lost her first, the first time tournament she went. She went to the final, and then like her opponent iced her and she lost. And Richard's, all depressed. And he goes to the park. And he's just hitting tennis balls out into the blackness of night. And the local gang shows up, who he had a small altercation with earlier in the movie. And, he ends up getting in a fight. And then he goes to get retaliation. But then something happens where he didn't even have to do anything. It's just like, it took care of itself. Join Inspired Disorder Plus today. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com/plus to join. Membership includes members-only discounts and deals. You get access to the Ray Taylor Show completely ad-free, as well as bonus episodes. You get access to the complete live painting archive. You also get access to every single podcast ever produced by Inspired Disorder, hosted by Ray Taylor. You get access to Ray Taylor's personal blog, as well as the opportunity to ask me any questions. So if you want to start a podcast, you're into art, ask me anything. And so many more things are being added every day to Inspired Disorder Plus So sign up today, become a member, head on over to inspireddisorder.com/plus and become an Inspired Disorder Plus member today. It's just, it's moments like that where it's like, oh, that's what happens in biopics, is just like, oh, things just like effortlessly take care of themselves because, things obviously worked out in real life, but how do you portray that in a movie? I don't know. It's tough. It's tough. I think they could have, this, aside from like, there's not a lot. I think they could have shown the racism more. I don't know if you need to show racism more. There's plenty of it just out in the world. But like, I don't know. It seemed like they said there was more racism than the movie showed. And I'm sure there was a ton of racism. But the movie doesn't really bother with trying to show any of that. So I don't know. But it's a fun ride because it's like, he's instead of listening to everybody say like, this is the path. This is how every tennis player, goes. They go through this path. They go through juniors, and then they graduate to bigger tournaments, and then they finally go pro, and then, you get an agent, and you get all this money and stuff like that. And it's like, and Richard didn't want to do any of that. He was blazing his own trail because he didn't want his girls to get burnt out, right? He knew that just training, if they keep training, they're going to keep getting better. Practice makes better. So there's practice, but having fun. Like, at no point, he didn't at any point push them over what they could handle. Had fun. But then also, when they're having fun, like there's a scene where they're watching, I think it's Cinderella, right? It's like, oh, let's have a movie night. And it ended up being like a lesson. It's like, oh, what did you learn after watching this cartoon? And he's just trying to teach humility. Like, I loved all that stuff. I thought, like, the characters are amazing. Richard, I think, like, every aspect of Richard I thought was great. But it was by an actor that I felt was, not the greatest choice. I don't know. But in the end, it all worked out. At the end, it shows like, what has like these title cards that come up at the end that say like, oh, and then in the future this happened and this happened. And the craziest thing was Reebok signed, I believe it was Venus, to a contract for $12 million at the age of 15. So like, when they showed up to the pros, they were good. They were fresh because they weren't burnt out. They were happy. They lived a happy life. They were well educated. Like Richard made sure, and his wife made sure, who was played by, let's see here. Of course, it's not going to be. No. What was her name? Why is this not showing? Anyway, the mom. The mom was great. And also, like, there's a scene where she's teaching Serena, which, shows that, like, Richard wasn't the only one training. There's a point in the movie where he mentions that they were both athletes, but it's not really shown as much. I just feel like there's so many things that could have been explored more, especially like the negative threats that were around, right? You stretch this movie into a series, and you can get into the gangs more. You can get into the racism more. You can get into like people trying to take advantage of them. Like the negotiations of this movie were pretty great, although also very effortless. Like you see Richard just like just throwing away offers knowing that he could get more, and then it just happens. So it's like I think they could have fleshed out a lot of that stuff a bit more if it was a series versus a movie. But all in all, I enjoyed it. It's not like a great movie. I like the kind of the lessons in this movie, whether you're an athlete or even an artist. I mean, a lot of things, if you're doing anything in life, right? Art and athletics are very similar in that, like, you have to, it's up to you to do the thing. Like, if you don't practice, you're not going to get good at a thing. If you don't put yourself out there, you're not going to get good at a thing. But also, burnout is real. Burnout's real for anything you're doing. And doing anything too much without enjoying life, enjoying what you're doing, then it can easily, like, be harmful to your progress. But I don't know. It was okay. Will Smith's a little overrated, but a fun story nonetheless. And check it out if you want. It's it's mostly good. It's a mostly good movie. And some people may love. I mean, people obviously love Will Smith. Some people think Will Smith is an amazing actor. I don't at all. Would never categorize him as a great actor. He's never shown. I don't know. Maybe like Pursuit of Happiness is probably his best, like, acting. Probably. And similar type of characters, like a father sacrificing everything to have a good life for his kids. So kind of similar, definitely kind of a dad movie as well. But yeah, like something that I enjoyed. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't great. I think make a couple little changes, and I think that could have taken it to the next level. You know, like Delroy Lindo, again, I'm going to keep going back to that, but Delroy Lindo in this role, I could see being nominated for an award. Right? He brings a little bit more edge to it. I think it's well written enough. I think it's a good story. I think it's an interesting character. I think he would bring an extra dimension to that character that would probably be noticeable because he would be able to have that edge in those scenes, instead of having Will Smith be like charming Will Smith trying to be like intimidating. I don't know. But yeah, King Richard, it's on HBO Max and in theaters now. Check it out. New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at inspireddisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. And follow the show on Instagram at Ray Taylor Show. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!